Damas y caballeros, welcome back to From Across the Pond. Today we're here to preview New York City FC ahead of their 2022 season, and we're fortunate enough to be joined by broadcaster Roberto Abramowitz. Thank you for joining us, sir, and how are you?
I am doing fine. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So, to begin with, I just want to delve into the beginnings of the club. In the first few years of the franchise, we saw the club use the old MLS system of bringing in veteran stars from Europe, namely Lampard, Pirlo, and David Villa, all arrived in the Big Apple to bring the glitz and glamour. But obviously, the results didn't follow for New York City FC. After the departure of Villa, the club kind of veered off that trajectory, changing philosophy, and started to use the extensive network that the City Football Group provides, bringing in elite talent, especially from South America. We're now seeing a lot of clubs around MLS tap into this market, with Alan Velasco going to FC Dallas and Facundo Torres signing with Orlando City. How do New York City FC ensure that they are the premier destination for these young talents? And what do you think led to the change in philosophy from the club?
Well, it's a little open-ended, right? The fact that, I mean, you spoke about it right in your intro, the fact that the team didn't win any championships right off the bat. Now you see how Atlanta United, in their second year, were able to win a championship. So obviously the objective always was to be a top-level team within Major League Soccer and to be able to win championships, not just win games, but but championships. So at first they brought in great players. David Villa especially bought into everything that this team was doing, and on the field, I mean, everything he gave was absolutely fantastic. He at when he first arrived the year before the team even began in 2014, he did not speak a word of English, and within 2 years he's doing interviews in English, which was just absolutely outstanding. Aside from everything that he did on the field, with all-time leading goal scorer, won an MVP in 2016. I mean, he was a great player. Lampard was a disappointment in the fact that of the way that he was used, because he was the big selling point before the team even started, and then as the team was about to embark in their first season, they decided to keep him over in Manchester City for another half a year, and that was a huge disappointment to New York City fans. Once he got here, it took a little time to adjust, and then in his second year, he really, really played very, very well. As far as Pirlo is concerned, he really came here on the downside of his career. He was able to give New York City a really good second year. In his third year, you could see that the wheels basically fell off, and then he lost his position on the starting team. They sold a lot of tickets. They really did. I mean, when you go to Yankee Stadium, and especially when they were there, the amount of Pirlo shirts and Villa shirts that were there, Lampard as well, that fans had bought, showed part of the reason why they were there. But at the same time, the team didn't win, and it was spending a lot of money. And aside from the fact that they're paying them millions and millions and millions of dollars, New York City is also paying quite a bit of money just to rent Yankee Stadium until their own stadium is built. So they pivoted, and they decided that it was best to try to get young South American players, and then being able to use them and then sell them off and actually make a profit, which is starting to happen, even with either players that are coming from South America, or mostly right now players that are coming out of their own academy. So people like Joe Scally and James Sands. We saw that originally with Jack Harrison. So, so the philosophy is to go in that direction. And it's a better philosophy as far as the team is concerned, because it's giving results on the field. And at the same time, you're taking these players, and then you're able to hopefully be able to increase their value and sell them on, as opposed to finding somebody at the end of their career, who will wind up either retiring or going to China or Japan or Asia, East Asia, to finish their career, like Villa did. So as the team won the championship last year, it's hard to argue against the strategy that they're using now.
No, it's absolutely a strategy of sustainability, especially with the young academy kids that are coming through. One of the players who joined looking to benefit and has benefited from the City Football Group links and exposure was Taty Castellanos, sorry. Most expert observers thought he was a shoo-in to depart in the January transfer window to Europe. And it obviously didn't end up transpiring. Do you envisage him departing to South America, or do you think New York City FC will look to hold on to him until the summer window?
I think they're going to try to hold on to him to at least the summer window. It's a better window, not for the team per se, as far as competitiveness, but just general business to be able to hold on because this way he can go to a team that he's going to be able to have a full training camp with and do well, hopefully. Obviously, he's got to continue in his upward rise as he did towards the end of last season. He was the leading goal scorer in the league, finished with what was it, 9 goals in his last 7 games, or 10 in his last 8, including MLS Cup. So, I mean, he was the major reason why New York City wound up winning the title. And if he can continue to do that at the start of the season, it's very, very important. Also, New York City is part of the Concacaf Champions League. And now this is a team that actually has a chance to do something that no other MLS team has done, that in the present format of the CONCACAF Champions League is actually win it, because it's basically been all Mexico, and I think Saprissa of Costa Rica won it once. And if not, every other championship has been with Mexico, and it shows the dominance that Mexico has and Liga MX has over MLS. Of course, Liga MX doesn't have a salary cap, MLS does, and that is the biggest reason why they continue to dominate, because there's a lot of teams that would spend way over the salary cap had they gotten that opportunity. But the way this team is built, even with some of the departures like James Sands, who went to Rangers, this is still the team that can compete and win that championship if everything holds up and they don't have any major injuries.
Absolutely, and that's what I was going to touch on. Obviously, given the run in the playoffs, winning 3 games on the bounce on the road, 2 of them in by penalties, obviously with the MLS Cup being by penalties as well. Does this provide the confidence for the club heading into the Concacaf Champions League? And do you think this could be the year an MLS side wins it? Obviously, because like you said, their Liga MX sides have been dominant, but the 3 most powerful teams at the moment aren't in this year's edition of the competition, with no America, no Tigres, and no Reals. So do you think New York City or another maybe MLS side could be victorious?
I would think so. I mean, I think that they've shown to be competitive in the last few years. I mean, obviously, still the fact that Mexican teams can outspend American teams 2-1, is a big difference. When you have some of the Mexican teams, like, although you mentioned Rayados now, Tigres, last year, pretty much every one of their players would have been qualified or classified as a designated player for any MLS team. So, and MLS teams can only have 3 of those. So it's a huge difference. At the same time, I think that MLS teams are able to, sign players at their value and get more value for their money than Mexican teams do, because Mexican teams, to be able to hold on to Mexican players, wind up overpaying them considerably. And so that's part of the reason why they pay as much money as they do on their teams. But this New York City team is just solid all the way through. It really doesn't have a lot of holes. They have a great goalie in Sean Johnson. Their defense is absolutely solid. Alex Callens was just named to the defender of the tournament in CONMEBOL for the Sunday's or this weekend's action. So you have that. Chano has been great. You can just go through the team, and there's just really, really no weaknesses. The bench is solid now again, once everybody's recovered from injuries. And they still have to bring in players. They still, have to fill in all the gaps of replacing people like Gudimar Torarensen, who left, and obviously James Sands, who left, although on the team itself, you have people like Nico Acevedo who can step up into that role. We hope, for New York City's sake, Keaton Parks is able to start training soon and, join the team, coming back from his injury. So, you hope that the team is going to be solid, and they're still going to bring in more players. They let Jesus Medina go, so they still have to replace a lot of players that they let go.
No, absolutely. And talking about that depth, one of the key pieces of that depth is Heber, the striker. Obviously, with injuries, kind of lost his place. to Taty Castellanos, but with the uncertainty surrounding Taty and the multiple competitions this year, do you think he's a key part of the depth and how successful New York will be in challenging on multiple fronts?
Oh, 100%. He's got to be. If New York City can recover the Eber that first arrived on the team, then the team is going to be fine as far as center forward is concerned, with or without Taty Castellanos, because Eber is a class striker without a doubt. He struggled last year coming back from injury. It took him a little bit longer than he thought, but the whole point was to make sure that he didn't re-injure it. So, he worked so hard at strengthening his leg again after that horrific injury at Red Bull Arena in Chicago 2 years ago. And so far in preseason, for what we hear, he scored a couple of goals, and so that's a good sign, because he didn't score at all last year. And we hope that Eber can get back to being the ever-loving Eber that is the most popular player in that locker room with everybody, including Taty Castellanos.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just you touched on it earlier about Yankee Stadium. Do the club have plans, concrete plans at least, to be moving into their own or start building their own stadium in the near future?
Well, it's very hard to build stadiums in New York. It's not only a New York City FC thing. If anybody studies the history of the Giants, the Jets, the Yankees, the Mets, the Islanders, you'll see how difficult it is to build stadiums. The Islanders have been looking for their own stadium since 1994, and they finally were able to move into their stadium this year. So it takes a long time. It took the Mets about 10 years to build their stadium, and they're in the middle of nowhere, out in Queens. So, and it was basically built on their own parking lot, and it still took a long time. Yankee Stadium took almost 10 years as well. The Jets couldn't build a stadium in New York, and finally had to go out and build MetLife Stadium with the Giants. So, and that's out in New Jersey. So it's not easy. It's not easy building stadiums here. So they were close, it seemed, to be able to build something in the Bronx near Yankee Stadium, a few blocks away. Things went awry towards the end. I don't know if it's rescuable or not. It's not dead, as far as the team has told me. That situation isn't dead, but the team is more focused on Queens, which is actually a much better place for them. They would be in Jackson Heights, right next to Citi Field where the Mets play, where Shea Stadium used to be. And that area is just like soccer heaven in New York City. It is mostly Latin American public that lives in that area. So in what is Corona Park, Queens, and in Jackson Heights, and that area where Flushing Meadows is, there are tons of leagues of different countries with there playing soccer every weekend, all day long. And so it's really an absolute hotbed. It is the best place for them to be able to build a stadium. There's an area that's actually designated next to Citi Field for entertainment purposes. So there's a lot of hurdles that they don't have to jump through to be able to build there. But having said that, they still need community board approval. There's still a lot of things that have to happen. They still have to negotiate everything with the Mets. From the last time that I spoke to New York City about it, they said things were progressing, but there really wasn't progress per se, but things were moving along. So, and that's where everything stands. We're waiting. We're waiting. And they also said that there are other places in Queens that they're looking at. But as far as I'm concerned, I believe that really they're focusing on the parcel of land that's next to Citi Field.
Okay, nice. And then moving on to potential breakout players for this season for New York City FC. In the playoffs last season, we saw an increased performance level from Santiago Rodriguez, who was really incredible in the playoffs, capped by that goal against New England. Apologies. And then
Yes.
Tavion Gray, who, due to injuries, got a chance in the first team and really cemented his place throughout the playoff run. And then we've got Talles Magno, who in year 2 should be getting more minutes. Who do you think would one of those three be the breakout player to watch from this team?
As far as New York City is concerned, they hope it's Talles Magno because he's got the highest ceiling. There is Thiago Andrade, who came in with Thales and actually probably outplayed him for most of last season. But Thales was coming in with an injury. He played through it at the beginning of the season. They finally were able to, needed to shut him down for about a month. They did. And then he came back. And as the season progressed, you started to see how he really developed. And for a lot of players, especially like him, it takes about 6 months to be able to figure out MLS. When I spoke with Nico Acevedo at the beginning of last season about that, because he was a player who just wasn't, who had a lot of positive press, who they thought a lot of, and yet he was having really a hard time getting minutes. And when I spoke to Ronnie Dyla about that, he spoke about the speed of the game and how the speed of the game here is different. It doesn't mean that it tactically or technically better, but it's definitely faster. And for Nico Acevedo coming from Uruguay to coming here, it was a huge change, and it took him a long time to adapt and to figure out the speed of the game and how different it was. And so now in year two, before he got injured, I mean, he was really becoming a key piece in New York City. So in year three, I expect him to be better, and I think that we're going to see the same type of progression with Thales Magno, because he's got a world of talent, and you can see it in little bits and pieces of things that he could do. And I think that this season, with more playing time and now much better adapted, I think that you're going to see a breakout season for him. And I think that the ceiling also for Santiago Rodriguez is huge. I think he's going to be an extraordinary player. I think we're going to get to see him play a lot more at the 10, because you can't expect Maxi to be able to play Maxi Morales to be able to play as many minutes as he was in years past. He's getting a little bit older, and you got to protect him so he's ready come playoff time.
No, absolutely. And obviously with the Concacaf Champions League kicking off before the season, and like you mentioned before, the depth and the ability the New York squad has, do you think that, and the success they had last season being a lower seed in the playoffs, do you think that they will prioritize the Concacaf Champions League at first, therefore being happy with a lower seed in the playoffs when they come around, because they have the knowledge and the knowledge that they have previously been successful from a lower seed?
I mean, I think that they will prioritize it. I mean, if it comes down to it, it's a really short, trip to the finals, right? If you're successful, and they don't get to play Mexican teams, I think, until the third round if León survives. So against Santos de Guapiles, a team that was in fourth place last season in Costa Rica, lost in the first round of the playoffs. They're barely starting to get going. I haven't checked lately, but I know that the first two games were postponed, and they were getting ready to play their third game, and I haven't really checked to see how they're doing since, and that was only a couple of weeks ago. So both teams are going to be coming into the game at almost at a similar level. Obviously, Santos will have, a couple of games under their belt that will help. As far as New York City is concerned, they travel to Cancun on tomorrow, I believe. They arrive in Cancun, and then they've got a couple of exhibition games that they've set up over there. One against FC Cancun, which is a new team that's going to be playing, that they replace Atlante, who went back to Mexico City. And then they also play Gallos de Querétaro, and that's a team in the first division in Mexico, Gallos Blancos. So they'll play those two games before they travel to Costa Rica. And they're playing Santos in San Jose. They're not playing them in their home field, which is a 3,500 seat stadium that didn't meet the requirements for CONCACAF, just like for some reason, and we don't know why, Citi Field in Yankee Stadium didn't meet the requirements for CONCACAF either. Yankee Stadium cost $1.6 billion. I mean, and somehow it's not good enough for CONCACAF. I don't know the reasons why. It seems to be a little bit insane. Citi Field costs close to $1 billion, and it's a gorgeous stadium. And I don't get why that stadium isn't approved. So that's why they're going to wind up playing out in LA at Bank of California Stadium.
Yeah, and playing in LA, which is crazy, a home game in LA. But
the nomad team for absolutely the nomad team.
No, because I remember a couple of years ago they played Tigres in New York Red Bull Arena, isn't
Right,
it?
and they played half their season in Red Bull Arena last year because the Yankee Stadium wasn't available because of the compressed timeline that baseball had because of COVID. And now, there may be another situation this year. Right now, they're supposed to play all but one of their games at either Citi Field or Yankee Stadium and only one at Red Bull Arena. But if there isn't an agreement between baseball and the players union, then, beginning of the season, they're going to be fine. But then once they start playing, then one would have to believe that the calendars are going to wind up being adjusted and that New York City is going to wind up being scrambling. Strong possibility that they'll be scrambling for dates, and they're going to wind up playing a load of games either in Red Bull Arena again, or maybe they'll go to Hartford or someplace else. But the fans have spoken; they really don't want any more games at Red Bull Arena. But the team is probably going to have their hands tied.
No, absolutely. And who has to be New York City FC's best player or most important player this year for them to, have success again and maintain their status amongst the elite of the Eastern Conference?
You know, to me, it's a team effort. I don't think that it's just only one player. If Taty Castellanos has another great season, but Sean Johnson all of a sudden falls in form, that's a problem. So I don't put it in just one. I think that everybody's got to basically raise their game. There's going to be a couple of players who might have a slight fall off because of age, like Maxi Morales. Maybe he won't and all that. But the rest of this team is young and should only get better. Obviously, you've sold off a couple of big pieces, and then you have others that who have left. So you have to replace them. The team has been very apt in finding, very good replacements. Obviously, when you belong to the City Football Group, you have their massive scouting department. That is a huge advantage over every other team in Major League Soccer, because I'm sure that Arsenal isn't exactly helping Colorado with theirs. We haven't seen anything, go by there. So CFG brings something to the table that no other team in this league has, and that scouting department has, found a ton of diamonds in the rough. And then eventually, New York City is going to be able to use these players, have success with these players, and then sell them on, and then continue keeping the wheel rotating, right? Bringing other young, good players with high potential from South America, getting more and more kids from their academies to come up, like Scally, like Sands, like Tavon Gray. So, they're in a really good position. They've really put that together very, very well.
Success going to be defined by, or only be successful if New York City FC have won a trophy at the end of it, be it Concacaf Champions League or a repeat in MLS Cup?
I think that the team is aiming to win both of them, and they have every reason to aim to win both of them. We still haven't seen, what the final rosters of all the teams in MLS is going to be. There's a lot of teams that are rebuilding. You mentioned Velasco that went to FC Dallas. That Atlanta isn't going to be staying still. You know that they sold off a couple of players, but they're bringing players in. So, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be retooling. Toronto is doing a great job retooling right now. And so we'll see. But the expectation is to definitely advance far in the playoffs. And sure, I'm sure the expectation is to repeat. I don't think there's anybody in that locker room or in that front office that doesn't think that this isn't a team that can go and repeat. Look, they went as you, what did you call it? Not on the trot. What is that British expression that you guys use for on the road?
Oh,
On the bounce, you said.
yeah.
Right? That was
Yeah.
it. Right.
No bounce,
I don't
yeah.
talk in Briticisms over here. I never call it pitch and I never call it nil.
Yeah.
So if I was in England doing games in England, I would do that, but not here. So they won they won their last three playoff games on the road. Hostile conditions, and not hostile as in, I fear for my life, but full packed stadiums and full crowds and making a lot of noise. So just trying to define what a hostile condition is, because I think you know there's bombonera hostile conditions in Argentina versus hostile conditions in Portland, which
Yeah, yeah.
people are just so brilliantly nice.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And Roberto, I just want to say thank you very much for sparing the time and joining us today. and hopefully we talk again soon.
Anytime. It's a lot of fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.